Hey, it's Janine, and welcome back to my channel. This week I wanted to share my story of receiving my Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome diagnosis and how I processed it, basically from denial to acceptance and what I'm doing now in my everyday life to hopefully, help with my symptoms. So I was diagnosed with PCOS in January of 2019. And in order to receive that diagnosis, you have to have two of three things. There's a couple different criterias out there, but I'm just going to go over the one that I was diagnosed with. So the first is you have to have polycystic ovaries. So as you can see here on my ultrasound, it's what they call the string of pearls. It's a string of follicles just around your ovaries. So check. 2, irregular or absent periods, which I had. I'm also going to put a slide up of my last 8 or so cycles and what those looked like in the lengths. The first 8 months I did have a complication due to stenosis of the cervix from a LEEP procedure, so they didn't diagnose me right away because they weren't sure if my missing periods were because my cervix was blocked with scar tissue or if in fact I really was not ovulating, therefore not having a period. And then the third thing is you have to have high androgens. And androgens are basically like high testosterone. You can have excess facial hair or just body hair in general, acne, depression. There's a whole list of things. I don't experience most of those symptoms, not enough to qualify me for having all three. I received my official diagnosis from my OB, but when I saw the reproductive endocrinologist in March of 2019, he actually told me, well, you're actually lucky. You have the two easiest to deal with of the symptoms. I'm like, okay. That doesn't make me feel any better. He actually told me when I asked him, I wanted to find the root cause because, there's got to be a hormonal imbalance, which is why you get the high androgens. I wanted to know why. And he did not seem to want to find that out at all. He said it didn't matter, that a woman didn't need to ovulate every month. And there's a lot of people who would disagree with that. If you're not ovulating regularly, something is not working correctly. You have an imbalance in your body. So it's kind of a bummer that that's how he felt about that. But he's not my doctor anymore. But, I've got to talk about my denial of having PCOS first because, like I said, they couldn't diagnose it at first. And I just flat out refused to believe it. I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way this is just now popping up in my life. But I didn't understand at the time that by taking hormonal birth control, I was actually masking all my symptoms, that I probably would not have had a normal period if I had taken breaks from birth control. But I didn't. So, here I am. I also just didn't want to believe it because I didn't want to believe I had fertility issues. I did everything right to not get pregnant when I wasn't ready to be, and I was responsible, and so it was really difficult for me to accept that I'm 1 in 10 and I'm gonna struggle with fertility, and that's how my journey is gonna go. And at some point I crossed into the acceptance. My husband definitely played a big part in that. I think that his support of just moving towards IVF played a big part in me accepting it because, it was a really hard thing for me to swallow how much we're gonna have to pay to build our family, and so for him just being so supportive just made it easier for me to start accepting it and just being okay with it. So once I started accepting my PCOS diagnosis, the first thing I did was I went hardcore back onto keto. I'd followed the ketogenic diet in 2018 for completely different reasons. It was actually because I was having chronic headaches and we weren't sure if it was, I don't want to just use the word carbs, but we weren't sure if that could have been playing a part into it, maybe gluten, but my headaches were really bad enough to where I went to see a neurologist. I followed the ketogenic diet, and surprisingly enough, my headaches went away. But I also had just gotten off birth control too, so it could have been a combination between, not receiving those fake hormones anymore, or synthetic hormones, and then following a lower carb diet. But I hit the ground running with a ketogenic diet. But I was taking metformin. My OB had prescribed metformin, which helps like with your insulin levels, and it just basically brings you like to an even keel, and it was making me feel really nauseous and lightheaded all the time. And so I had talked with my primary care physician and to try to get an insulin resistant test, because I didn't think I was insulin resistant. My fasting glucose is great. I have no reason to believe I'm actually insulin resistant. And so when I did the test with him, he did order me a fasting glucose test, but he did feel that it was probably a waste of time, because based on my other numbers and where all my blood work had come back, like it's probably pretty unlikely that I'm insulin resistant. So I decided to stop taking the metformin and just stay low carb. But I would start feeling guilty. Like I wanted to make sure that I was taking care of my ovaries and doing the best that I could for them. And it got a little out of hand, and it became unhealthy. So then I changed my mentality to where I was just having a balanced diet instead. And that's just making sure I eat, a lot of veggies and less processed foods. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, there's still times where it's all about being quick. But for the most part, we cook at home 4 to 5 nights a week. We have a vegetable with every dinner. Very rarely do we even add a carb now, because, I mean, if you have a big beefed up salad, you don't really need potatoes or anything like that. So that was one of the things I did. I also got rid of all single-use plastic. So I stopped bringing my lunch in plastic containers and switched over to Pyrex. Luckily, this didn't cost me that much money because we already had the Pyrex. I just needed to start using it. So that was a pretty easy switch. Another thing we did is we stopped buying I don't know if they're 36 or 40 packs of water bottles at Costco, but we started getting the big 6 packs of, I think they're quarts, but my husband really likes the way that Costco water tastes, so he still buys those. And then I couldn't find a really good glass water filter, but I did find a really good BPA free water filter, and so now I just leave that on my counter and I use tap water and I filter it out, and then that's how I drink my water. So while I don't think I've gotten rid of all single-use plastic, I've definitely reduced my usage by probably 85%, because that's known. There's a lot of studies, which I won't go into here, but there's a lot of studies showing that single-use plastic actually is a cause of infertility. I also started taking more vitamins. So I was already taking a prenatal, but I added CoQ10, if that's how you pronounce it, to help with egg quality. Since I wasn't taking metformin anymore, I started taking myo-inositol. All of this stuff can be found, and it starts with the egg. So if you want to pick up that book, I highly recommend it. I also started taking additional vitamin C, and then because now I'm getting closer to my egg retrieval, I did start taking melatonin before bed. I also have started cutting caffeine. I started slowly with adding in decaf like every other day, and then now I'm just completely on decaf, and then I'm gonna try. See, for me, coffee is more of just a comfort. It's just about holding that cup of coffee and part of my routine. So I'll probably still do decaf at least 3 times a week, because it's part of my routine. Let's see, what else did I do? I think that's kind of about it. So yeah, those are the things that I did. I struggled with accepting it, then I accepted it, and then I made changes. So if you have any questions, you can always leave a comment, ask away. I'm definitely not an expert in PCOS, but I know it's working for me, and you know, hopefully once we're done with our treatment and we're able to, I'm able to get my natural cycles back.